positive reinforcement in terms of, hey, I love this job. Hey, I'm trying to make things better.
They forgot that passion and they now become these negative Nancy's. Welcome to the Triple P Podcast, premier, professional, and proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. I'm your host, Clayton O'Brien, and I'm the fire chief for the city of Oregon. I'm joined by my co-host, Captain Joel Fry from the city of Napoleon. Welcome to the Triple P Podcast. This is an exciting one with Mark VonAppen. Mark is actually a member of the California Fire Service since 1998. He's assigned to the suppression division where he holds the rank of captain. He is a committee member of California State Fire Training, has contributed to the development of firefighter survival and rapid intervention curriculums. Mark has been published in Fire Engineering Magazine, Fire Service Warrior. He is a creator of the Fire Service Leadership blog, Fully Involved. He has been selected as a speaker at FDIC International in 2015, 16, and 17. He is as well as Firehouse World 2015 and 2016. He is an instructor for the Santa Clara Joint County Fire Academy, a recruit instructor for Palo Alto Fire, an academy instructor at Evergreen Community College, and a member of the Nobody Gets Left Behind training group. He has been involved in public speaking since 2006. That's quite the bio there, Mark. So I want to just give everybody a moment to just make sure you get all the attention that you need, because I know when I first met you, you're a guy that needs a lot of attention. So I take that from you. So welcome, Mark VonAppen.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thanks for
you're
having
welcome.
me.
Yep. So we're super happy to have you, man. I think it's going to be excellent just to kind of talk about, some of the things that we talked about a little bit right before I actually hit record. And, it was the experience that, I had met you in the Ohio Fire Chiefs conference. You did a great presentation, and we talked a little bit about, all the things that you're most passionate about. So if you want to, just kind of start there, and we'll kind of see where it leads us to.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm glad that you made me sound incredibly narcissistic and needy. That's great, because that usually is a good icebreaker. People like to know that about people coming in the situation. But in terms of, what am I most passionate about? I'm most passionate about people, and I think that that's really what, when you break everything down, in our world, it's all about relationships in the firehouse and building those relationships and creating a good strong foundation of accountability between the people in the firehouse, the leader, the company officer, whoever that is, and the brothers and sisters that work there, all working together so that we can go out and deliver a great service to the communities that we are invested in and care so much about. So it's all it all, if you had to draw like a big circle around whatever I think is most important in the fire service, it's obviously the people. When you talk about budgets and you talk about equipment and those things, and those are super important. But without driven, motivated, outstanding people getting on the rigs every single day and showing up at the firehouses to do their jobs, all that stuff just sits there and collects dust. So that's the thing that I am most passionate about, is people and building relationships.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Because I think that it doesn't matter how many fancy trucks you have or how good the station looks or any of that stuff, because none of it's able to go out, and answer the calls if it ain't for the people. But unfortunately, you hear those comments sometimes that, firefighters are, their careers are kind of ended inside the firehouse, just through culture. Have you ever heard where they're these maybe young, passionate individuals that are, eager and wanting to learn and, do all these things in the fire department, but at some point they get to a place where they forgot that passion and they now become these negative Nancy's, and they try to, get other people in that same negative.
Well, I think that, kind of what we call it in my department is being retired in place. And just, I think what happens is you have these people that are super passionate about the fire service, and part of the curse of caring in the fire service is that by virtue of what we do, we show up and we make a difference and we get immediate results, right? We show up on whatever kind of a call it is, and we we make it better almost immediately by showing up, and we're welcomed in, and we're revered. And all you got to do is look at when a fire engine drives down the street. I mean, you can hear kids when you drive past a school. Little kids will just run up and grab the fence, and through over the drone of the engine, and through your headset you can hear a kid just yell, "Fire truck!" And they just love you. And so that adoration, you want that to carry over into everything that you do on the job. And so when you've got this passion for the job, whatever it is, sometimes when you're excited about doing something on the job, it creates more work for somebody else. If you come up with a project to try to change how things are done in the organization, it creates work for not only yourself but other people within the organization. And so people just aren't always receptive to that. And so what that does is that lack of positive reinforcement in terms of, hey, I love this job, hey, I'm trying to make things better, hey, I want to contribute. When you're continually rebuffed at your efforts, it can lead to frustration, and then it can lead to people acting out, and it can lead to people worse, shutting down very early in their career. And I think that's the worst thing that I've seen, is people that come in super passionate and burn out too early because people don't support them sometimes, and that's difficult. And that's the trick, I think, in your career is, and that's one thing that I learned over the 25 and a half years that I've been in is the hard way. I've learned it the hard way, is that you have to maintain a healthy level of engagement that you can maintain throughout your career. And you are going to have ebbs and flows, but overall you have to maintain it sounds silly, but somewhat of a sunny disposition, where you have to understand, you have to always remember how hard it was to get the job and how much you love it, and how long, for me personally, it took me to get the job. And that would, and you'll have your brothers and sisters that are on the right path as well that will remind you of those things. And but I think the overarching thing that I had to remember too is more people care about the job and more people are invested in the job than aren't. But the people that are not invested in the job and complain a lot, and I've been guilty of it too, constitute probably about 10% of it. It's that 80-20 rule. And I was talking to a fire chief yesterday about it, and she said, the whole 80-20 thing is totally true, except for I think it's more like a 90-10. 90% of people do the right thing, and then there's a 10% that really do occupy a lot of your time and have a lot of negative energy. And if the goal is, like I said, to maintain a healthy level of engagement, that's what we have to remind people of throughout their career, and especially early on, is pace yourself. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But everything we do is 100 miles an hour, and we want instant gratification. And so that's the problem, right? And so I think that the nature of our job lends itself to saying, oh, we should be able to do this right now, and we can't. And patience is not something that firefighters are good at demonstrating a lot.
Yeah, they're just, back to the point of like the 90-20 or the 90-10 or 80-20. I kind of feel the same way where, but also in the shoes of fire chief, like I look at it a little bit different, where I would rather just focus all my time on the 90% or the 80%. And you know what, the 20%, and I actually say it's 80-10-10, where 80% are, pretty much on board, they're engaged. 10% that are going to be, kind of, the ship has already sailed. So that's the 80%. The ship is already off the dock. There's people that are within swimmable distance. If they jump off the dock, they can still get on board, type of thing. And then there's people that, are so far behind that it didn't matter, that ship is too far gone that they may not find themselves on. And so when they become so far gone, it's, it's trying to kind of reinforce and maybe change. And as leaders within our departments, maybe trying to look at ways of re-coaching them in different ways to get them engaged. Because as you talked about a lot, it's really about being engaged. And I would say what changed me the most in my fire service career was early on, worked for very poor leadership. And until I had an epiphany of, 3-4 5 years in, said, you know what? I'm not going to let this guy steal the best job in the world. You know, I don't want to come to work and be negative all the time and just have a bad attitude. Like, we have the best job in the world. So let him do his thing. But you know what? It's not going to change how I talk to the public, answer the call, train, make sure I'm, the best of the best for what we're trying to do. And I think that's what we try to really reinforce to young individuals today, because they can be they're just sponges, right at the beginning when they start.
Right. And they're going to mirror the behaviors that they see. And yeah, I mean, it's funny, you were talking about, the 80-10-10 thing. It reminded me of a little snippet of a reel that I saw from Nick Saban. And he talked about getting the right people on the bus. He says, you got to get the right people on the bus, and the people that don't want to be on the bus, you got to get them off the bus, because, and we don't really have that ability necessarily in the fire service to get those people off the bus. There's certain protections in place for employees that are good, that also can hinder us in other ways. But what it's incumbent upon us to do in leadership roles, you as a fire chief or me, as a company officer, it's important that we find ways to speak to those people and engage them one-on-one, and maybe understand where their frustration comes from, and hear that from them, and then find ways to say, hey, listen, I don't need you to be that person that is leading the charge and training every single day, but there are things that you are good at, and I need you to be there for those things, and I would like you to take ownership of some of these things that, first of all, take ownership of how you show up and be coachable, be somewhat positive. A lot of the things that we hold grudges about in the organization happened years ago, and a lot of those people are gone, and we carry these crosses, and we punish people in the present for the sins of people that have already retired. And that's the hard thing, because we carry those things with us. I find myself sometimes talking about, this chief did that, or this guy did that. And it's like, well, shoot, they retired 10 years ago. Why am I wasting any time talking about them? They're not thinking about us. They're, polishing their classic car and enjoying retirement and doing things like that. So, I think if you can build those relationships, and like I said, it's all about relationships. If you can engage people and talk to them one-on-one and foster that relationship and show that you care about them and that you're invested in them. And I'm speaking about these maybe 10%ers who are really difficult to reach. If you can get them to just show up, and, a lot of them, they'll do their job. I mean, they're just not excited about it, but just do me a favor. Don't trash talk the organization. Don't trash talk the fire service.
That's a really good point, because, they will do their job. They'll do whatever's asked for them, but they may not carry the initiative or the passion for the job, or may not like it. They treat it like a job. And that could be, honestly, when I had a young guy, super good fireman, great EMT. He was actually going to be leaving our organization, and he came in and talked to me about it. Was going to go to a neighboring organization, and one of the things that I explained to him is I just talked to him about, like, hey, I said, hey man, I said, you're super passionate about the job. And I said, the one thing that might be very frustrating for you is when you go to a larger organization, you may find yourself around individuals over time that aren't as passionate about the job as you are. So don't let them take that passion away from you just because they're not passionate about it, but just understand that there's some people out there that just don't look at the fire service or our job as, their calling. They look at it as it's a job.
Yeah. And the thing is, people, you can be very good at your job and not be passionate about it. You can be completely dispassionate and be super functional. And there's a lot of people out there that surprise you. You get them in a training situation, or you see them on a fire, and you don't think they're paying attention to anything. And they're like, wow, look at them. They do a really good job. And so that's, people articulate how they feel about the job in different ways. Some of us dive in, head first, and we go to as many classes as we can. We talk about it as much as we can, and it's our hobby, and it's our love, and it's our whatever it is. And other people have other things that they love to do as well. And most firefighters are super smart and can compartmentalize really well. And just because someone doesn't, that was a struggle that I went through, was dealing with, fighting through that, not understanding people not having the passion for the job that I had. And I often, talk about the fact that I would want to, reach out and strangle people sometimes, not literally, but figuratively, because they didn't love the job as much as I did. And I felt that they couldn't possibly understand what I was asking them to grasp, but they didn't have that emotional investment that I had. And I don't necessarily know that that's totally true. I mean, you can have top performers that are completely dispassionate about the job and they're good enough, and they've been doing their job long enough that you can trust them to do their job. And that's what you have to understand, is you have to maintain a baseline level of proficiency. Mm-hmm. We all know that. Mm-hmm. And how do we understand where people are with that? We get them there through training and scenarios and things like that. And if people are performing at a high level in those things, and they're willing to show up and take classes and be active participants and learn and all that, on the job, and they're willing to take coaching from the people that go outside, and support their passion. They may not be super excited about it, but hey, teach me a new trick. I'll listen, I'll learn, because this is my job. This is how I put bread on the table. So that's, there's a lot of different ways that people, get through their career, and I think it's difficult. Sometimes it's more difficult to be that passionate person, and it is easier to just cruise along and just say, oh, whatever, I'm just here, paydays and 4 days, and do a good job. When you're invested, when you're super invested in it, and you love it, and you're trying to, beat the drum for positive change, that's when you can, get yourself, in trouble, and burn out, because it's hard to be that person all the time. And that's why somewhere in the middle, the truth lies. It's maintaining that high level of proficiency and a baseline level of passion, where you're like, hey, I'm still excited about the job. Hey, I still love the things that are great about the job, and I'm still going to try to learn as much as I can. But the problem too is life gets in the way, doesn't it? I mean, you sometimes people get married and have kids and all that other stuff, and it, and rightfully so, that should take precedence. Your family and your kids should take precedence over, the job. And that's a hard one for people to grasp sometimes too, especially when you're brand new and young. You look at these people that are middle-aged in their career, and they've got little kids and all that, and you don't get it. And they're talking. I remember cruising around on the engine one time when I was newly married and we didn't have kids, and my captain and his wife had just had their first baby, and he kept talking about, the baby's poop, and the baby was pooping. It was so cute. It was all this stuff. And I was just like, God, barf, man. All I want to do is go to fires and talk about fires. And you're talking about baby poop. So anyway, it just wasn't.
But then it's a different perspective when you have your own, right?
Yeah. And then I understood it.
Yeah.
I didn't obsess about my baby's poops, but
I think there's I truly believe there's like different phases in the firefighter career. Maybe like phase one. Okay. Phase one, you're a sponge. You want to learn everything. You're eager, you're wanting, you're brand new in the job. You just tested against all these other people. You went through this rigorous process, medical, everything, and you got the job. So day one, you're excited. You get on it, and that happens for, a year, 3 up to maybe 2-3 years on the job. 2-3 years on the job comes, and then now it's like, you've gotten through your probation, you've made it through, and now you are God's gift to firefighting. It all. And so you are. I think that's where it really comes out. I'm the alpha male type of deal, and you're God's gift to firefighting until the point where you become a little complacent, and then I would say maybe 5 to 7 years that firefighter falls into that humbling experience, and then they just kind of they don't know what they don't know. Something got them, whether it been a call, training event, something. They went to a class, their eyes were wide open, and then boom, they now become that mature firefighter. And I don't know, maybe the is it the Dunning-Kruger effect? Like you go your highs, your lows type of thing, and so can you comment on that? Do you think that there's different phases along the way as well?
Oh, absolutely. As I was listening to you talk about that, I was thinking about my own spin on it, and I would describe it this way: you start off your career as an idealist. You come in and you think the fire service is going to be a certain way. And you're just bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, super excited, and everything's great. And then you do go out and you start to, so you're very idealistic at the beginning, right? And then you go through this phase where maybe you step outside your organization and you start going and taking classes and seeing what's out there in the world, and you become radicalized, where you want to change everything all at once. You become that know-it-all type person, like you said. And that phase goes on for a while until, there is maybe some type of an event that's humbling to you, or you get your ass kicked so much by trying to take on every project possible and cure every perceived ill in your department. And then you basically become a pragmatist. So you go idealist to radical to pragmatist, where you're like, oh, okay, it is what it is, and I'm just going to have to accept what it is, manage my expectations, and just try to get along so that I can survive and make it through my career healthy, both in body, in mind, and emotionally. So it's, I think that those are the three phases of it. And when I where that came from was talking to my dad, through going through, some things that he went through in his coaching career as a football coach. Same thing. And the way that I described it when I wrote this article with him called 3 Decades of Perspective, and I wrote it probably 10 years ago. But it talked about the 30-year arc that he went through in his coaching career. And that was how I described it. He was very idealistic, very naive, and then, had some success and learned some things from some of the greatest, in that realm. And then he became a radical and he took some hard stands on some things and got himself in some hot water, and got a reputation as being somewhat of a hothead. And then, later on, once he, got later on in his coaching career and into retirement, he just became very pragmatic, and he looked back on some of the things that he did and said, I probably could have managed the things a little bit better. And the things that I did, with the idea that I was going to make some sort of a big splash and some sort of big impact, the rock that I threw in the water didn't, make a big enough splash, and the ripples didn't shift the sands on the intended shore. So sometimes there's a way to get along that doesn't require, these big overt displays of, energy and emotion and things like that. There's different ways to get at it. So that's, I would just use some different words, but I think that it's exactly, what you described is exactly how I would describe it, just using different words.
Well, I think that, I honestly, when I came across Fully Involved, it was actually on Facebook. I didn't realize it was a full-on blog. I had seen, the different blurps that you had put out there, and, things that these short sentences that, really, really, made a lot of sense. So then when I started looking up the different stuff that you had put out there, and man, you're a really good writer. So like you have a lot of different articles. They stretch back for a long time. So full disclaimer, I do want to make sure that it's full disclaimer. I was giving Mark just a hard time at the very beginning about all this attention because of the jokes that we had at the conference. So I know that maybe not everybody, really fully understands that, but
it's okay. If people meet me in person, they'll see exactly what you're talking about.
They'll see.
So, yeah, thank you. In fact, I really kind of want to get back to the writing. That's something that I sort of miss, and I've been, I keep procrastinating because it's hard to sit down and write and exercise those writing muscles. But I've been trying to, get back to writing at least 20 minutes a day and things like that, because I used to write things that were longer pieces. And more and more what started to happen was, because of the way that information's, spread about through social media and stuff, people don't sit down and read 15-page articles anymore. They have time for, if you can't grab them in a minute or two, they're going to swipe and go do something else. So that's why it started becoming, on Facebook and Instagram or whatever it is, it started becoming one sentence or two sentences or something it was just a thought bubble, as opposed to, writing this whole thing and meandering through and collecting thoughts and making this big point in 5, 6, maybe 10, 15 pages. It just became this whole meme thing. So, and it's been, I think people respond to it. I initially said I would never do it that way, but it just kind of turned into that. So, I mean, it seems to work.
I think people respond to it very, very well. And I think that the reason why they respond to it is because, as we talked about those different phases in the firefighter career, we all find ourselves in one of those phases right now today. And however, whether we are in that same phase or we're above it or below it, those memes, resonate with us, when we read it. So like, I know that, when I see them popped up, I'm like, it may not hit me today, but I truly believe into it because it was something that, may affected me in phase number 2. And that's where I kind of, look at like your fully involved where it actually is a blog, but the big 4 that you had came up with, and that I think resonate with a lot of people and a lot of people in the fire service to, that big 4 that I'm referring to, do your job, treat people right, all out effort, all in attitude. Those short, sweet, to the point, but also this individual that says, you know what? The fire service is about being down and dirty. It's about, we are low staffed all the time. We do have to get the job done, and there's nobody else to call besides the fire department. When you have a problem, you call the fire department and they got to solve it. So I kind of just used this example the last week when I talked about a position here when at the fire department, when we get called, it's like, maybe not everybody's a dad at home, but everybody, if you take care of a house, that's no different. Like you got a problem to solve at the home. The toilet broke, or the sink needs this, the grass needs mowed, the kids need their, diaper changed, the tire needs fixed, the oil needs changed. You got to do, you're a master of everything. So the individuals that find themselves in the fire service, I believe, are those individuals that, I kind of live by, which, good dad, good leader, kind of both, one in the same. So with you making up all these things that are very short, sweet, to the point, is why so many people connect to it. So how, in what phase did that happen with Mark VonAppen to say, you know what, I want to create this big 4 and this kind of big push? Because I see this on, bay doors at firehouses, hung up on signs in the station at different places, so that's huge.
So to your question, where did it come from? That has its origins in when I first got promoted to company officer, and it's based in the chemistry that we had with one of the first crews that I was working with, where we had a really good blend of just all the types of personalities that you have in the fire service, and we had a lot of young people that were on, the station that I worked at. We had an engine, a paramedic unit, so 3 on the engine, 2 on the paramedic unit, and we had a rescue company that had 3 people on it. And what it came from was just, those 4 things came from just watching people around our firehouse and how they behaved and how they and they just became reminders of, like, there were behaviors that I saw the firefighters there engaged in, and we had a really special group of people there. And I think, I've said it before, that if you really look around, every group of people in the firehouse is pretty special. I think there are those people that are tired and at the end of their career, and they may not seem very excited about it, but firefighters at their core are givers. And when pushed, that's what they're going to do. They're always going to do the right thing. So it came from that, and all of those things that was our way of holding each other accountable. And so all I did was observe what we were all doing together as a group, and put words to it. And I spoke to the other captains at the station. I said, hey, this is what I see all of our people doing, and I'd like to put words to it? Are you okay if we put these things up on the wall as reminders? And that became our accountability system. Do your job, win your individual battle every single day, treat people right. That means your brothers and sisters in the firehouse, give all out effort and have an all in attitude. Just show up, take care of you, how you're going to show up, and be proactive in how you show up every day, and take ownership of your situation. And that's kind of where it came from. And it's, it was something that I observed all of us doing together and just put words to it. So I derive my inspiration from people that I work with and going around the country and having it reinforced everywhere I go that firefighters are just good people at their core. So those are the types of people I want to be around. And so that's where it came from. That was a long explanation for a short answer, but that was where it came from. It came from a group of people, and some people that don't understand my personality or the blog, or some people will just think it's just me pointing and saying these, do these 4 things or whatever. No, it's like everything that I post every single day is something that I've pondered, or something that they're pep talks I have with myself. That's what the Big 4 is. The Big 4 is for me to remind myself of, and I it's a struggle sometimes. I'm not always that person. I mean, I'm human just like everybody else, and being the human condition is not easy. So, and that's something that we all struggle with. So, but if we're mindful of those things, and then the way I describe it is, if excellence is the summit, the Big 4 is our base camp. And the Big 4 is how we remain grounded and how we stay near the top of our game, so we never fall too far off the mountain. If we're doing those 4 things every single day, and if we're not, if we hold each other accountable, that's the basis of accountability is doing it for each other, not breaking someone off if they step out of line. It's reminding each other of things. That's accountability, in my opinion. So.
And that's a good key point too, because it's accountability for each other. I hold myself accountable so I can be better at my job, because I might be in a situation with you, type of thing. And rather than peer-to-peer accountability, I just think is just so much better than, being held accountable when you don't think you should be, maybe by a boss or whatever else.
Absolutely. And nothing stings more than when your brothers or sisters in the firehouse tell you, hey dude, you're not living up to who you said you'd be, and you're not holding up your end of the bargain. Pick up your game. You're like, oh shit. Mm-hmm. It's like, I gotta, that hurts. I mean, getting written up or something for some sort of a policy slip, or not getting something done on time. I mean, that sucks too, but it's not, that's easier to deal with than the disappointment of the people that you live with, and it's like, like you said, it's like being a parent, and the more, the farther I go, the more I look at leadership is and mentoring is exactly like parenting. There's so many parallels to it, and the difference is sometimes in the workplace people are more willing to listen to you than your kids are.
I was just going to say, that's kind of funny. I was just going to say that because my oldest is 22 and going to be 23, and my youngest is 18, just graduated high school last year, and and I would say that you probably get a little bit more receptiveness out of the individuals at the workplace more than I do my own kids sometimes. But just having that standard, I guess, this is what's accepted, this is what's not accepted, being clear and transparent and over communicating and early and often, just all those just like basic things that I strive to have when I was on the job, more underneath, poor leadership, that you just wish that you had just had that, from somebody. And because like we talked a little bit ago, is that, people want to do a good job. I firmly believe that nobody wakes up in the morning and comes to work and says, you know what, I just want to mess everything up today. Like, I just want to, everything I do, everything I touch, I want to break it and not do it right. And I just want to be this biggest piece of crap today. I just don't believe people think like that. Like, but then I feel like some leaders or some fire chiefs or some company officers, they look at their people like they are intentionally messing up. And maybe it's like the time when I worked in the construction business and I messed up all the time because I got yelled at all the time and I was nervous, so like I try to apply that same thing of like, maybe we aren't creating the environment for that person to, develop in and evolve in, and feel comfortable that it's okay to make a mistake, that sort of thing, but live out your comfort zone. Cause otherwise you will find them just sitting in the recliner and not having any work ethic or initiative or whatever, because the least I can touch, then I don't mess anything up.
Well, I think that brings us back to the beginning of the conversation when I said it's all about relationships. It's all about people. And I think that the biggest mistake that we can make is expecting everyone to be, exactly like us, and do things exactly the way that we would do things, and arrive at the same conclusions the same way that we would. It doesn't work that way, and that's why I say that empathy is such a huge word in leadership that I don't think gets enough credence. It's being able to see things through the eyes of other people and put yourselves in their shoes and their situation, because that's the basis for why diversity is important, not only in the classic sense of diversity and having a diverse workforce, but it's also diversity in thought. It's understanding that people can arrive at the same destination in a different way, and that's where, when you have that trust and you understand what your people are capable of, and you can let them go and allow them to arrive at conclusions on their own and step in only when necessary. That's where coaching and mentoring is so important. You step in, you stand back, and you're watching everything. You see what's going on, and you keep informed, but you don't step in at every juncture. You step in, you observe, and then if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, can I pick your brain?" you say yes, and then you offer your thoughts. Or if you see something where someone's about to commit some sort of an error that can't be fixed, you go, "Oh, well, hold on." You step in and you say those things, but otherwise, if you don't do that, you're micromanaging. And I think that the difficult thing, I think, as you get higher within the organization, and this is what I've seen, from friends of mine who've moved up, is I think that people think it's a crutch that people are overworked. They say that they're overworked and we're short-staffed and all that stuff, but I believe it's absolutely true. And I think that you get so task-focused that sometimes you do lose sight of the people. And I think that it's a function of being overworked. I don't think that necessarily any of them are bad people or set out to do something that is malicious or whatever, but they're getting pressures from other places to, break people off sometimes, and they have bosses too. And so I think that it's just it's difficult to maintain, to keep your eye on the horizon and see what's out there, and then maintain, keep your feet on the ground and be rooted with your people. But it's vital, and what that's why I say that the company officer's position is probably the most important in the fire service. And I've gotten some pushback on that from some people, but I think that if you're really in tune as a fire chief or a battalion chief with your company officers, and you take what they bring to you, and this is what's happening on the streets, and this is what the people are saying, this is what the people are feeling, and you work together to solve those problems, the company officers can be a vital, go-between between the staff and the line. But sometimes, again, there's just a disconnect, and some chiefs just feel like firefighters are just inherently whining, and they don't want to listen.
And I truly believe that the company officer position, middle management position, is the most vital in the organization. They're hearing it from the troops, then they're also hearing it from the administration, and then there's a balance in between. So the messages that they have to sell, and then especially if you depending on the type of chief that you work for, that message may be poorly delivered all the time, and maybe poorly delivered or communicated late and not early and not often, and you got to have this kind of mindset of just dropping nuggets sometimes, and not always have decisions, that or expect decisions right away. But don't forget where you came from as fire chief either, because it's about that time, but you spend with the time, and it's easy, like being in that position. This is a new organization for me that I came to, which is about, double the size of where the previous department that I was at. And you do find yourself that it's easy to say, hey, I'm just too busy for this or too busy for that, to not spend the time with your people. But if you don't spend the time with your people and kind of get what the boots on the ground are actually like feeling, saying, and needing, then you're going to completely miss the boat, because quite honestly, I'm a firm believer in servant leadership. So, if we don't understand what they're going through on a regular day basis, then, I feel like my job is just to make sure that I provide them all the resources for them to be able to successfully do their job and create an environment that people want to be around.
Well, I think that's why it's so important to understand that there's this, sometimes there's this push to promote as quickly as possible, and then you don't really understand, what the people are going through, because you never did it. Yeah. And that's the hard thing, is you can't be a fire chief if you never spent a lot of time in the trenches and you weren't really invested in being in the trenches and things like that. So, it's, some people forget where they came from because they were never there in the first place. And so that's what's tough. And I think the thing that's important too is we have to stress, you as a fire chief, to your company officers, hey, we have to, you have to support the organization, you have to support the mission. And we as company officers, when I was working as a company officer, you have to limit the shit talk. You can let the people do it, let them get it out of their system, but then get them up and get them moving and get them doing things that they like doing, training and doing things like that. Because it can become super cancerous. One of the things that I've floated the idea of is having an executive communication team, which I think is super important, where you've got company officers that can vet messages, and you send out messages, as the fire chief or as a deputy chief or whoever, you send out these messages to your company officers first, get feedback, get how do they interpret it, how do they read it, and then maybe they can help you craft it in a way that's more palatable to the membership. And then by the company officers understanding and hearing what the message is first, they're better able to speak in an educated manner to those messages when they come out, when the firefighters read an email and they say, what the is this? They're losing their mind, because that's their first, when changes occur, the first thing that people assume the worst, always. When I, as a company officer, have the background, understand where it's coming from, understand the intent, understand the message, and it's clear to me, I can speak to those issues, and we can put those fires out in the firehouse before they get bigger. Say, hey, well, listen, okay, actually, this is what it means. I understand you can look at it through this lens, but this is the lens of the organization. This is what we're doing, and this is what we're trying to do to move forward. And if we can employ and get everybody on the same page, the problem is, it sounds simple enough to do, but as you know, I mean, how many platoons do you have in your department, Chief?
We have 3.
Okay, so you got 3. So you got 3 ways of doing it, plus the fire department way, plus different ways of doing it within each platoon. So it's if we could just get everybody on the same communication page, that would help, because rumor and innuendo is one of the biggest killers of anything in the fire service.
And it takes takes a lot of work. I mean, it takes a lot of work, and you really you got to really put it as a center focus to make sure that you're communicating, because like being on this side, like the firefighters for you said, one is I'm a firm believer that company officers of any level need to be notified first before anything goes out to the rest of the firefighters. So that should be a regular officers meeting or whatever to discuss it. And then that way, when they're approached by the firefighters, but nothing's worse than just on a regular basis being involved at the firehouse, where you're, as in the chief level, you're trying to, I feel like I'm just like a broken record sometimes, like you're saying it over and over and over again. What I've had to come to understand is saying that that's what it takes, because, if we have a labor management meeting, we have a regular chiefs meeting, an all officers meeting, all staff meeting, and then just majority of the times doesn't even have to be a formal meeting. eating lunch at the kitchen table. Have this start to drop the nuggets, start having the conversation, so then people start talking about it. And yes, you become like you feel like you don't know who you've told who you've told what. So you're saying all the same things over and over again. It's not a different story. It's just, you're just repeating yourself on repeat. And it does take a lot of work as in the upper leadership roles, but you got to know how important it is. So like in the understanding of where communicating early and often, I say that a lot. And I say that not only to my assistant chief and to the battalion chiefs, and you just got to do that on a regular basis, because the ones that want to be involved want to be informed. And as long as they're informed, they'll be involved.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And keep me informed and make me feel like I'm part of the process, and allow me to make educated, allow me to have educated conversations with my people, so that I don't, something comes out, I'm seeing it for the first time too. That's not fair.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, your people come to you and go, "What's this?" And you go, "I don't know. Hold on. Let me read it again." And just like, and then, well, it sounds like this to me, but I guess I got to figure it out. So it's the whole idea that I always talk about, when we're trying to create new things, create change, or train somebody in something. It's introduce, install, implement. Let everybody know what you're going to do in a meeting. So, it's football stuff. Introduce the idea, walk through it, talk through it, do all that stuff. Install that idea. That comes in practice, right? That comes on the training ground. That comes whatever. And then you implement it. Then that's game time. You do the first two I's, and the third one comes along, and it's not the first time you've done it. It's not the first time you've talked about it. Unfortunately, as I've said before, firefighters are not master communicators. They're doers, and they're great at putting their head down and going, but they're not necessarily great at conversating.
Yeah, very true.
Communicating. So,
there's one other thing I want to get in that I want to talk to you about, and that is, and I don't know why this Teams thing just popped up and said that I only had 5 minutes left in this meeting. So if it does jump off, then can you reconnect? Because I want to talk to you about one a couple other topics. So.
No, I got other things to do. Let's get on it.
Yeah, get on it. Okay, so you got 5 minutes. Okay, so one of the things is that you held the company officer position for a while on a suppression rig. And many departments are preparing next level company officers for promotions, for future promotions. What advice would you give to firefighters that are looking to promote up? What they should do, how they could begin preparing themselves, and then maybe just evolve that into what to expect when you do ride that seat, when you do get into that seat. And maybe if there's different phases like firefighters, if there's different phases for company officers as you go through your career.
Well, I would guess, the best advice I could give to somebody is, early on in your career, while you've got the time and the energy, learn as much as you can, take as many classes as you can. But always be that person that's willing to step up and step in and help out. I think that we have to tell people that, your jacket that you wear throughout your career is usually, put on within your first year. Just live your life and live your career in a certain way, so that when you do take a test and you do get promoted, people say, that makes sense. That person's been that person all along. God, what was the next part of the question? I don't remember. So these multi-pronged questions mess me up.
Sorry. The next part would be like, so after you're in the seat, you're the company officer. Do you see it as different? Like, remember we talked about the different phases as like maybe through a firefighter's career. Do you see kind of those same phases within the company officer, or how do you think the company officer career goes, as if let's say it starts all over once you get promoted?
I don't think it starts all over. I think that you have to have a good foundational basis to start as a company officer, and that's what I think sometimes where people run into trouble is they position hop, and they just roll through things, and they end up in a position where they don't really understand how they got to where they are. They just sort of fall forward into promotional positions, and then achieve a certain level where they're like, oh, I don't understand what my company officers are doing or what their job is. So really take the time and learn the jobs, and just know that everybody's watching. And when you're in that company officer's position, everything that you say is amplified. Everything has more weight, and you can't take plays off. You have to be that person all the time. You can still be part of the crew, and you can still have a good time with them, and you have to be a functional team member and have their trust. And trust is paramount, but trust is also, you have to trust them to do the right thing even when you're not looking. So, cultivate relationships, know your job. It goes back to the big four: do your job, treat people right, give all that effort, have an all-in attitude. I mean, if you just apply those things to what you do, I mean, it's pretty simple. So, but just be aware that people are always watching, and you're not only representation of yourself, but the organization, the fire service at large.
That's a great. I appreciate that, Mark. It's a really good way of putting it. So I know that there's just a lot of individuals out there that follow you on Facebook, have the memes, have the connection, want to be able to. They look up to you, and so you have a lot of good information. And I hope you do keep up the writing part, because all the I went back and printed a bunch of the ones that you did, because like I said, I didn't know you had the blog piece. So I do really hope that you do get back to the writing part and putting out the little bit more for those that do want to kind of see your viewpoints on the expanded parts of the little memes that you've originally posted on Facebook. So. But, I do really, really appreciate your time. I mean, that's all I really had as far as the things I wanted to cover for you. If there's any other major points that you want to make sure we get the message out, then have at it. No,
it was super fun. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I was only kidding when I said I had better stuff to do. But I just no, thank you. It was a great conversation. It's always fun to do these things. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk to you and be on your podcast. And it was great. And, maybe we should try to do it again sometime.
Yeah, we should. The Ohio Fire Chiefs just really appreciate it. I was hoping that I was going to be able to make it down to the expo to see you and connect with you there, because sometimes it is a little bit different when you can actually be both in the same room, kind of feeding off each other as far as the information goes. But either way, I'll look forward to seeing your different events as you continue on the speaking path and spreading the good message of the fire service. So everybody's excited about that. And I know if you haven't had a chance, for any of the listeners out there, if you haven't had a chance to sit in one of Mark's classes, certainly make it a thing, because you will leave energized, you'll leave ready to reset if you need to have the reset button, and and for what I felt like I did, was able to be able to kind of bring back some different ways of being able to spin the words, maybe saying the same thing, but spin the words a little bit different that might resonate with somebody else to help jumpstart them if they are in that that phase of their career where they're having a little bit of a struggle to be able to get remotivated and back on it again. So do appreciate all your time, Mark, once again. And, keep up the great work, man.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it.
Yep. Take care.
Take care. Be safe.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Triple P Podcast, Premier, Professional, and Proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. If you'd like to hear more, follow us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you feel so inclined, please help us spread the word by telling your fire and EMS friends about this channel.